Dive into the past to the year 1928, when a significant medical breakthrough was about to change the course of human health. Step into the shoes of a man named Alexander Fleming, a Scottish bacteriologist in a dingy London laboratory. He was not a man to discard a petri dish without a second glance. And it's this trait that led to an accidental discovery that transformed the world of medicine. In the quiet solitude of his lab, Fleming noticed a peculiar mold growing on one of his petri dishes. Upon closer inspection, he realized that the mold, Penicillium notatum, had created a bacteria-free zone around itself. This simple observation sparked a revolutionary idea. Could this mold be harnessed to fight bacterial infections? Fleming's discovery was groundbreaking. He had found the world's first antibiotic, penicillin, a substance capable of killing bacteria without harming human cells. Imagine the excitement, the awe, the possibility. This was a time when the simplest of infections could lead to death, when surgeries were a game of Russian roulette with sepsis, when pneumonia was a death sentence. Penicillin offered a beacon of hope against these formidable foes. The impact of antibiotics was immediate and profound. Millions of lives were saved from the grip of infectious diseases. Surgeries became safer, child mortality rates plummeted, life expectancy soared. Diseases that once spelled doom were now treatable, all thanks to this humble mold and the keen eye of a scientist. But it wasn't an easy road. It took more than a decade before penicillin was mass-produced. The Second World War proved to be a catalyst, accelerating the process. Soldiers on the front lines were saved from infected wounds, showcasing the power of antibiotics to the world. In this way, a new era dawned in the field of medicine. An era where infections were no longer death sentences, where surgeries could be performed without the fear of post-operative infections, where people could live longer, healthier lives. Thus, the era of antibiotics began, transforming medicine and giving us a powerful weapon against bacterial infections. Fast forward to the mid-20th century, often referred to as the golden age of antibiotics. This era was a time of rapid discovery and development in the field of antibiotics. It was as though a new antibiotic was being discovered every other day, and each had its unique way of combating harmful bacteria. Scientists were in a race against time, and their labs became the battlefields. They were churning out various classes of antibiotics, each with a unique mode of action, targeting different types of bacteria. From penicillins to tetracyclines, cephalosporins to macrolides, these antibiotics were the avant-garde of a medical revolution. The world marveled at the immense benefits these tiny, potent molecules brought to the table. The death tolls from bacterial infections plummeted, and diseases that had once been death sentences became treatable. Pneumonia, tuberculosis, scarlet fever, and other infectious diseases saw a drastic reduction in mortality rates. The antibiotics were hailed as miracle drugs, and rightly so. They transformed the landscape of medicine and gave humanity a fighting chance against bacterial diseases. Hospitals became safer places. Surgeries, which were previously considered a high-risk gamble, now had a safety net in the form of prophylactic antibiotics. Childbirth, burn care, and chemotherapy all saw a significant reduction in associated risks. It seemed as though we had finally found the magic bullet against bacteria. But it wasn't all sunshine and roses. As antibiotics began to proliferate in the market, they found their way into places beyond healthcare settings. They were used in agriculture, livestock, and even in our households. This widespread use, while it brought many benefits, also started to sow the seeds of a new problem. Antibiotics became a cornerstone of modern medicine, but with their widespread use, a new problem began to emerge. One that would threaten the very foundations of the progress we had made. But that, my friends, is a story for the next scene. Scene script. Enter the dark side of antibiotics, the rise of antibiotic resistance. As antibiotics became widely used, they brought a new dawn in medical history. But every coin has two sides, and with the boon of antibiotics came the bane of antibiotic resistance. This resistance didn't appear out of nowhere. Rather, It's the consequence of our actions, the overuse and misuse of antibiotics. Imagine antibiotics as keys and bacteria as locks. The antibiotics or keys fit perfectly into the bacteria or locks and kill them. But what happens when the locks change shape? The keys don't fit anymore. That's exactly what antibiotic resistance is. Bacteria, being the tiny survivalists they are, have evolved to change their locks, making our keys useless. The overuse and misuse of antibiotics have accelerated this process, giving rise to superbugs that our current antibiotics can't defeat. Now, you might be thinking, so what? I'm healthy. This doesn't affect me. But that's where you're wrong. The rise of antibiotic resistance is a global crisis. It's not limited by borders or confined to hospitals. It's in our communities and it's spreading. The World Health Organization warns that antibiotic resistance is one of the biggest threats to global health, food security, and development today. It can affect anyone of any age in any country. It's estimated that antibiotic resistance causes 700,000 deaths globally each year. And if we don't act now, this number is expected to rise to 10 million by the year 2050. Antibiotic resistance is turning common infections into untreatable nightmares. It's making routine surgeries risky. It's threatening the progress we've made in healthcare over the last century. It's pushing us towards a post-antibiotic era where a simple scratch could kill. Antibiotic resistance threatens to take us back to a pre-antibiotic era where common infections could once again prove deadly. We're standing at the edge of this precipice. It's up to us whether we fall or find a way to pull back. In today's world, we are battling with this very crisis. A crisis that has us on our toes, a crisis that has us questioning the very nature of our medical practices, the crisis of antibiotic resistance. Antibiotics, once hailed as miracle drugs, have become a double-edged sword. On one hand, they have saved countless lives by fighting off lethal bacterial infections. On the other hand, their overuse and misuse have led to a surge in antibiotic-resistant bacteria, rendering many of these drugs ineffective. Today, we are at a crossroads. Antibiotics are being consumed at an alarming rate. A report by the World Health Organization reveals that antibiotic consumption has increased by nearly 50% in many parts of the world over the past 2 decades. This rampant use of antibiotics is leading to an escalating number of superbugs, bacteria that are resistant to multiple antibiotics. But it's not just the overuse that's concerning, it's the misuse. Antibiotics are often prescribed for conditions they can't treat, like viral infections. This not only fails to cure the patient, but also contributes to antibiotic resistance. Yet, in the face of this daunting challenge, there's a global effort underway to tackle it. Scientists are working tirelessly to develop new antibiotics and alternative treatments. Governments and health organizations are implementing strategies to promote rational antibiotic use and reduce the spread of resistant bacteria. Education is also a vital part of this fight. It's crucial to educate healthcare professionals, policymakers, and the public about the responsible use of antibiotics and the serious consequences of their misuse. Moreover, we're seeing promising advancements in the field of diagnostics. Rapid and accurate tests are being developed to identify bacterial infections and their antibiotic susceptibility. This will help in prescribing the right antibiotic at the right time, reducing the chances of resistance. While the situation is grim, it is not hopeless. We are still in the fight, and the future holds promise. Our actions today will determine whether antibiotics remain a life-saving tool for future generations or become a relic of a time when we could effectively combat bacterial infections. Looking ahead, we see a beacon of hope in the form of antibiotic stewardship. This is not just a buzzword in the medical field, but a critical strategy to the long-term efficacy of antibiotics and the fight against resistance. But what exactly is antibiotic stewardship? Simply put, it's the careful management of antibiotic use to ensure these life-saving drugs remain effective. In a world where antibiotic resistance is on the rise, this practice is more important than ever. It's like a game of chess. where we must think several moves ahead, anticipating the opponent's strategy, which in this case are the rapidly evolving bacteria. Antibiotic stewardship involves a few key strategies. The first is appropriate use. This means only using antibiotics when necessary and ensuring the right dose and duration. It's about precision, not overkill. The second is diagnostic stewardship, where we use advanced tests to identify the exact type of bacteria causing an infection. This allows us to select the most effective antibiotic rather than using a broad-spectrum drug that may contribute to resistance. The third strategy is infection prevention. By preventing infections in the first place, we can reduce the need for antibiotics. This can be accomplished through simple measures such as hand hygiene, vaccinations, and safe food practices. Now, you might be wondering, why is antibiotic stewardship so important? Well, the stakes are high. Every time we use an antibiotic, we give bacteria a chance to evolve and become resistant. This means that the more we use these drugs, the less effective they become. Antibiotic stewardship is like a shield, protecting our arsenal of antibiotics from the onslaught of resistance. It's a strategy that can preserve the potency of these drugs for future generations. But it's not just up to doctors and healthcare professionals. We all have a role to play in antibiotic stewardship. This means using antibiotics responsibly, following the prescribed dosage and duration, and not demanding these drugs for viral infections where they are ineffective. It's a collective effort, a global commitment to safeguarding the power of antibiotics. There's no doubt that it's a challenging task, but with concerted effort and unwavering determination, we can turn the tide against resistance. Remember, antibiotics are a precious resource, a gift of science that has saved countless lives. It's our responsibility to ensure they continue to do so. We are the stewards of these powerful drugs, the guardians of their efficacy. As we look towards the future, let's keep this in mind. The battle against antibiotic resistance is not lost. We have the tools, the knowledge, and the power to make a difference. It starts with understanding, with awareness, and with action. Antimicrobial stewardship is the key to a sustainable future where antibiotics continue to save lives. It's more than a strategy. It's a promise to future generations, a promise of health, of healing, and of hope. Innovation and research hold the key to overcoming the antibiotic resistance crisis. As we enter the final frontier of our journey into the world of antibiotics, let's delve into the crucial role that innovation and research play in this ongoing battle against antibiotic resistance. The development of new antibiotics is one of the primary fronts on which this battle is being fought. While it is true that the discovery of new antibiotics has significantly slowed in recent years, it is also true that scientists and researchers worldwide are continually striving to turn the tide. These tireless efforts have resulted in the development of a number of promising new drugs that are currently undergoing clinical trials. However, the development of new antibiotics alone is not enough to win this war. We also need innovative alternative therapies to treat bacterial infections. This is where the exciting field of phage therapy comes in. Phage therapy uses viruses that infect bacteria, known as bacteriophages, to treat bacterial infections. This innovative approach has shown promise in early-stage trials, and ongoing research aims to make it a viable alternative to antibiotics. Another critical area of research and innovation is the development of rapid diagnostic tools. Rapid diagnostics can quickly identify the specific bacteria causing an infection, allowing healthcare providers to prescribe the most effective antibiotic. This not only improves patient outcomes, but also promotes the prudent use of antibiotics, thereby helping to slow the spread of antibiotic resistance. Innovation and research also extend beyond the realm of medicine. Scientists are exploring the role of the human microbiome in health and disease, and how we might harness its power to combat antibiotic resistance. Additionally, new research is exploring how artificial intelligence and machine learning can be used to discover new antibiotics and predict the emergence of antibiotic resistance. So, while the challenges are significant, we are far from powerless in the face of antibiotic resistance. With continued research and innovation, we can hope to stay one step ahead in the battle against antibiotic resistance. As we stand at the crossroads, the future of antibiotics depends on each one of us. Let's revisit our journey through time and reflect on the main points. We've traced the birth of antibiotics back to the serendipitous discovery of penicillin and the golden age that followed, where these life-saving drugs were hailed as miracle workers. Yet with the rise of antibiotic resistance, we saw the advent of a new era, where these miracle workers were no longer as effective. In the present scenario, we are wrestling with superbugs, bacteria that have developed resistance to multiple antibiotics. This, my friends, is the consequence of overuse and misuse of these drugs. We've also delved into the concept of antimicrobial stewardship. It's an approach that seeks to optimize the use of antibiotics, ensuring that they are only used when necessary and in the correct manner. The role of innovation and research is pivotal. These twin forces are our primary weapons in this fight. They work in tandem to develop new antibiotics and strategies to combat resistance. But it's not just about creating new weapons, it's about using our existing arsenal wisely. And this is where each one of us comes into play. Whether you're a healthcare professional, a policymaker, or a member of the general public, we all have a part to play. Healthcare professionals need to ensure they prescribe antibiotics judiciously, while policymakers must enforce regulations that promote responsible use. As for the general public, it's our job to use antibiotics as directed by healthcare professionals and not to demand these drugs for viral infections where they are ineffective. The future of antibiotics is a shared responsibility. It's a fight we're all in together. It's about understanding, respect, and action, and most importantly, it's about not giving up. Together, we can ensure that antibiotics remain an effective tool for generations to come. The fight continues, and every action counts.